Good evening to all of you. I'm Carol Patterson. I think I know everyone, but anyway, I'm Carol Patterson, President, and along with Rami Muth, Vice President, we're your Board of Director leadership team. Thank you for joining us for our first general meeting of the program year. The Program Planning Committee is working to deliver programs that reflect the membership's interest in 3 areas: racial inclusiveness, justice, and equity, voter rights and education, and climate change. Tonight, we are introducing the Climate Change Program priority. At our next general meeting in December, we will focus on racial inclusiveness, justice, and equity. I encourage you to get involved in helping shape these upcoming programs. It's a great way to meet people who share your passions and an avenue to share your ideas. I'd like to introduce Marianne Polmetter, for those of you who don't know her, who will introduce our climate change program and our guest presenter. I want to thank you, Marianne, for framing this presentation for the membership, including a recommendation of our very knowledgeable local guest speaker. So, Marianne.
Hey, thank you, Carol. Well, welcome to everyone this evening. This happens to be Climate Week. And as we speak, we have world leaders meeting in New York for the UN General Assembly and Climate Week. This is a critical moment for climate action. We're all hoping that some positive results will happen. The world's facing an emerging crisis. We're really in a climate crisis. Yep. Nearly everyone on the planet feels the impacts of climate change, especially over the last few months. We've watched where nearly 42,000 Californians needed to evacuate their homes. We had the Dixie Fire, the Caldor Fire, the near annihilation of Grizzly Flats in California, 43,375 acres of our beautiful sequoia trees burned. And now more are threatened, including the grove that includes the largest sequoia tree. The town of Lytton in British Columbia a few months ago was destroyed. Nowhere is safe. You could be in the most idyllic area and you're not safe. Mm-hmm. Flooding has occurred in China, Uganda, Nigeria, the US, and Western Europe. Extreme heat waves have occurred in Africa and the Americas. Wildfires in the United States, Canada, Russia, and the Arctic. And heavy monsoon rains in India and the Philippines. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is the world's most authoritative scientific body on climate change. And they show that these impacts are only the beginning. So tonight we are going to learn more about climate change, what causes it, what the possible consequences are, solutions. Very important. We need to look at solutions. And our presenter tonight is Dr. Bonnie Hamilton. Dr. Hamilton is a local pediatrician, and she's the leader of the Solano Climate Policy Action Team, part of the Bay Area Climate Chapter of the Climate Reality Project for the Bay Area. She serves on the board of directors of the Napa Solano Medical Society, Sustainable Solano, and the Solano Sierra Club. And she's also a member of the League of Women Voters of Solano County. So with that, I will introduce Dr. Bonnie Hamilton. Welcome, Dr. Hamilton.
Great, thank you, Marianne, and thank you, President Patterson. And I'm honored to be here with the Solano League of Women Voters tonight, and honored to be able to present to you this important topic. I'm going to share my screen, so let's see how this works. Here we go. And I am going to do one other thing, which, okay. So let me begin. So the Climate Reality Project was co-founded by former Vice President Al Gore, who conducts live trainings 3 to 4 times a year for Climate Reality's Leadership Corps. Prior to the pandemic, the trainings were done in person, and I trained with him in October of 2017 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 1 week after the Tubbs fire. He now does the trainings virtually and trains people from around the world. He does have a training event coming up in October 16th through the 24th, and many of the slides I'll be using are from that training. And this is where we begin. Here is our beautiful planet Earth. And here's an excerpt from the poem Hieroglyphic Stairway by Drew Dellinger, which exemplifies why I do this work. It's 3:23 in the morning and I'm awake because my great-great-grandchildren won't let me sleep. My great-great-grandchildren ask me in dreams, what did you do while the planet was plundered? What did you do when the earth was unraveling? Surely you did something when the seasons started failing, as the mammals, reptiles, birds were all dying. Did you fill the street with protest when democracy was stolen? What did you do once you knew? The sky is not a vast and limitless expanse the way it appears to us as we stand on the ground and look up. In reality, there is just a thin shell of atmosphere surrounding our planet. Here is the basic science of global warming. I am going to request somebody mute. There's doggies I hear in the background, so if everyone can mute, that would be great.
Yeah, if everyone could mute if you're not speaking, please.
So again, here is the basic science of global warming. This has been understood by scientists since the 1800s. Energy from the sun comes to Earth in the form of light. That energy is absorbed by the Earth and warms it. Some of that energy is re-radiated from the Earth in the form of heat. Some of that outgoing heat is trapped by the atmosphere, which is a good thing. It's kept our planet at a stable temperature all these many years. However, we have now thickened the atmosphere by filling it with heat-trapping pollution, especially carbon dioxide. More heat energy is trapped and it is warming our planet at an unprecedented rate. We are putting 152 million tons of man-made global warming pollution into our fragile atmosphere every single day, using it as an open sewer. And the accumulated amount of man-made global warming pollution now traps as much extra heat as would be released by 600,000 first-generation atomic bombs exploding every day. There are many sources of human-caused global warming pollution: agricultural practices, forest burning, transportation, and many others. But the main source and cause of the rising global temperatures we are seeing today is the burning of fossil fuels. The binge of fossil fuel burning that we've been on since the end of World War II is causing the trajectory to go up in a reckless and dangerous way. That's driving the air temperature up. This past year was the hottest year ever recorded with instruments. The pattern is extremely clear. 19 of the 20 hottest years ever measured have been since 2002. And the 7 hottest of all have been the last 7 years. Heat itself is a problem in many parts of the world and many parts of this country. Heat affects not only people, but animals, crops, and our weather. The temperatures went to above 100 degrees on the shores of the Arctic Ocean in northern Siberia last year. And of course, this hastens the melting permafrost, which is another factor in climate change. But on a global basis, 93% of all that extra heat is trapped in the oceans. And that, of course, driving ocean temperatures up year by year. The scientists can measure this more precisely now, and the heat is going deep into the ocean. And shockingly, half of this increase has been in less than the last 20 years. When the oceans heat up, the hurricanes get stronger. The Gulf of Mexico was 7 degrees warmer than normal when Hurricane Harry dropped 5 feet of rain on Texas in 2017. And last year was the most active hurricane season in the recorded history of the United States. In fact, we ran out of letters, and I think we had to start the alphabet again. Beyond the hurricanes, we see the warmer oceans putting much more water vapor into the air, which leads to record-breaking downpours. This is a rain bomb, and these extreme precipitation events have produced more rain in many regions around the world, including much of the US. Farmers also were profoundly affected in the last couple of years. 20 million acres couldn't be planted and harvested in the Midwest in 2019 because of the massive rain bombs and downpours. Sometimes people wonder how global warming can be blamed for causing precipitation and flooding, and at the same time, more drought. The extra heat trapped by rising levels of greenhouse gases actually leads to both. And as the climate changes, precipitation patterns also change, leaving some places with less rainfall than before. In the spring, we saw the new drought map here in the US showing that 78% of the Western US is being hit by drought. 94% of California is in drought right now. Neither downtown Sacramento nor downtown San Francisco recorded a drop of rain for the month of February last year, which historically is our wettest month. And according to the National Weather Service, we had never before had a dry February on record. And we know from experience that when the temperature goes up, we not only get more drought, we get more fires, combined with hurricane level winds. We all experienced the results last year. This is a picture of the Calistoga fire from last summer. We were evacuated from our home due to the Lightning Complex fire, as were many others. Our home was spared, but some of our friends in Vacaville and Napa weren't so lucky. California had already seen the 3 most expensive fires in world history over the previous 3 years, but they can't top the over 9,600 California fires that occurred in 2020 and cost 130 to 150 billion and burned over 4 million acres. In 2019, we saw what happened in the Southern Hemisphere in Brazil and surrounding countries in the Amazon. The fires were horrendous, not to mention the devastation that occurred in Australia. And if you put all of the climate-related disasters together, the reinsurance industry shows us this pattern is unmistakably clear. Same thing is happening in Antarctica. Decade by decade, the ice melting and degradation is accelerating. The first photo was shot in the summer of 1935 of a glacier in southwest Greenland and shows glacier ice covering the fjord walls. The second photo is the same glacier, which had almost completely melted by 2013, not even a century later due to rising temperatures. NASA has previously measured, sorry about that. NASA had previously measured, let's see, hold on, there we go. Had previously measured the decline in the mass of ice in both Greenland and Antarctica. All this extra melting is raising sea levels worldwide, including the Bay Area. This flooding occurred in Miami, Florida.
Just where that green fence is, it's like, it's just.
This was a sunny day without rain. High tides now regularly flood the streets of Miami Beach, as well as some other coastal cities around the world. This situation will only get worse as ice continues to melt and sea levels continue to rise. These are some of the reasons why the Defense Department in the US has long called this a national security crisis. It affects food and water availability and refugees. We see the effects at our southern border with all the refugees from the Northern Triangle in Central America. Many are climate refugees. Heat stress is decreasing crop yields from rice, corn, and soybeans. Exposure to high levels of carbon dioxide also decrease the nutrient content of many staple crops. We're also seeing the emergence of what biologists call the sixth great extinction. We're in danger of losing half of all the living species on Earth. This year, the Arctic was 25 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than in a normal year. Warming of the Arctic results in melting ice and sea level rise. And with the melting ice, there is less surface area to reflect the sun's rays, and more of the sun's energy is absorbed, creating a vicious cycle of warming. This warming has slowed down the jet stream, which historically has kept our weather patterns consistent. But now the warming has caused the jet stream to wiggle, resulting in what Texas atmospheric scientist Katherine Hayhoe calls global weirding, resulting in increased precipitation, drought, wildfires, and temperature extremes, which we've talked about. This also accounts for the freezing temperatures the US experienced this winter, where Arctic air escaped through the wiggly jet stream. We need to prevent, mitigate, prepare, adapt, and most importantly, even reverse what's happening. If we don't, it will continue to result in unprecedented human suffering. The climate crisis is the biggest health threat in this century, as many experts have shown. It's also the case that burning fossil fuels not only creates the climate crisis, but also puts particulate air pollution into the air that kills 9 million people per year. People living in areas with higher small particulate PM 2.5 emissions are known to suffer more heart attacks, lung problems, and to die younger than their counterparts in lower emission areas. Children are especially vulnerable to air pollution because their lungs are still developing, they breathe faster than adults, and because they tend to spend more time outside. This is playing out in marginalized and lower income communities across the country based on proximity to fossil fuel activity. The majority of oil and gas wells are located in environmental justice communities. So it's not only an environmental issue, it's an environmental justice issue. The poor people of the world are the ones who are most affected. Pope Francis has pointed that out repeatedly. This is a summary by social and environmental justice activist Hop Hopkins, who says, you can't have climate change without sacrifice zones, and you can't have sacrifice zones without disposable people, and you can't have disposable people without racism. Everything we do to address the climate crisis needs to be done through a justice lens. Locally at Benicia's Valero refinery, a power outage in 2017 led to a prolonged exposure episode of flaring, with more than 80,000 tons of sulfur dioxide was released into the air. And out of all the counties in California, Solano, Napa, and Sacramento are among the top 5 for lifetime asthma prevalence. Solano is number 3. The yellow line is the state average, and we're up at the top. You can see by the yellow dots the prevalence of oil wells in California, including the activity of fracking or hydraulic fracturing for oil and gas extraction. This shows in yellow the prevalence of activity in the Bay Area and Sacramento area. This activity is right in our backyard. This graphic shows how close these wells are to human activity. The blue area shows human activity within 1 mile proximity to fossil fuel extraction activity, and the red dots within 2,500 feet. More than 2 million Californians live within 2,500 feet of an operational oil and gas well, and about 7 million Californians live within 1 mile. The majority of oil and gas wells are located in and most impact fence line environmental justice communities, resulting in contaminated groundwater, air quality degradation, and increased risk of birth defects, as well as other diseases. Last year, AB 345 and this year, Senate Bill 467 didn't make it out of the Senate Natural Resources Committee. Both bills called for a minimum 2,500-foot setback away from fossil fuel extraction activity for things like schools, hospitals, long-term care facilities, and so forth. Unfortunately, there was intense opposition prompted by the fossil fuel industry lobbies, so both measures failed. Climate is also a threat multiplier for COVID. Any increase in air pollution increases the likelihood of dying from COVID, and higher levels of pollution are associated with higher death rates, even after accounting for other factors. Even small increases in pollution lead to big jumps in the COVID death rate. And as the pollution increases, so does the mortality risk. We have seen a racial difference in the impact of COVID-19, partly because communities of color are more likely to be adjacent to that air pollution. So while flattening the COVID-19 curve was of great importance, there is another bigger wave coming that we need to flatten, the wave of climate. And when you add up all the impacts of the climate crisis, the cost to humanity, the cost to the future is just unacceptable. It's also the #1 threat to the global economy. We have been treating the climate crisis like it's somewhere far away in time and place, but it is here and now. Traditionally, we planned by looking in the rearview mirror based on what has happened in the past. Instead, we must look forward and plan for what has never happened before, which requires bold thinking, courage, and imagination. And whatever we do, we need to do it at speed and scale. Here's the good news. We have solutions available. 22 years ago, the best projections, 22 years ago, the best projections for wind energy were that we might be able to reach 30 gigawatts by 2010. Actually, we've exceeded that by a factor of 24 times over. And the installation of wind in the United States is accelerating dramatically. And we're not going to run out of solar. Hang on. Oh my goodness. Pardon me. I'm gonna have to work through that. Somebody's leaving me a message. All right, let me go here. And we're not going to run out of solar because we get as much energy from sun every hour as the entire global economy uses in a full year. Hang on just a second. Okay, hang on. I apologize for that. We're going to put that, that's a long message. All right. The story is even more dramatic with solar energy, where the best projections 19 years ago were that by the year 2010, we might be able to get 1 gigawatt per year. But actually, when 2010 rolled around, we exceeded 17 times over. And last year, we exceeded the mark 132 times over. In many countries like Chile, for example, the construction underway and approved to begin constitutes a genuine breakout scenario. We're seeing this in countries around the world as solar and wind get cheaper and cheaper. It's a big success story. Look at Chile go. This is an exponential growth rate for solar in the United States, which is still accelerating. And one main reason is the cost keeps getting lower and lower. It's much cheaper than electricity from burning fossil fuels now. In transportation, partly because batteries are improving, all of these companies are switching from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles. GM was one of the recent companies committing to go all electric. Companies are now pledging to go to 100% renewable energy. Here are some of the giant companies around the world who have made that pledge. So let's talk about Project Drawdown, whose mission is to help the world reach drawdown and ultimately reverse global warming. Drawdown is the point in the future when levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere stop climbing and start to steadily decline, thereby stopping catastrophic climate change as quickly, safely, and equitably as possible. Greenhouse gas goes into the atmosphere, and greenhouse gas comes out of the atmosphere through carbon sinks. But as you can see, the majority of the greenhouse gas stays in our precious atmosphere. The goals are to reduce sources, bringing emissions to zero, support sinks, which is uplifting nature's carbon cycle, and improve society in fostering equity for all. Let's take a look at some of the solutions. Here are solutions by sector: food, women and girls, land use, transportation, building and cities, materials, and energy. Here is a pie chart of the solutions, and we ultimately need to do all of them. On their website, drawdown.org, they go into depth about each solution, including the supporting scientific evidence. One of the biggest solutions to the climate crisis is educating girls and providing family planning. Other important solutions are more plant-based diets and addressing food waste. We all know about telepresence. We're doing it now by Zoom. So what action can you take to help reverse the climate crisis? Hang on just a second. Okay. Sorry, I got another call, so I have to put all my phones away next time because they're getting me. So again, what actions can you take to help reverse the climate crisis? There are 4 levels of action. The first level is what we can do as individuals, such as reduce, reuse, and recycle. The second level is how we can influence our friends and family. The third level of action is what we can do in our community and how we can influence our local government and institutions. The fourth is what we can do at the federal level, such as vote in federal elections, write our US legislators, and sign petitions. We tend to spend most of our energy at level 1 and 4, but level 2 and especially 3 are potentially the most effective. Here's an example of level 1. This is my 23-year-old daughter, Johanna, when we had solar panels and Tesla Powerwall batteries installed in our home last summer. So we don't experience any of those PG&E shutoffs. Because now we have what's called a microgrid. We have a nanogrid because it's only we are only one place, but a microgrid, a clean energy microgrid, is solar plus batteries, and they offer energy security, resilience, and independence. Here's another level 1 project: installing a gray water system to capture wash and rainwater to irrigate landscaping. This could also be a level 3 action if we get our HOAs, our homeowners associations, and other local government entities to utilize more gray water. Marianne found this article, which lists 101 ways that you can take individual action. We will put the link to the article in the chat. This is an example of level 2, influencing family and friends to take action. Here's my friend Barb and I at the 2017 March for Science in Sacramento. I encouraged her to do the climate reality leadership training, and now she is an avid climate activist. Being a part of the Bay Area chapter of the Climate Reality Project, we started our Solano Climate Policy Action Team 2 years ago. We meet monthly and are involved in local climate action. Our group is open to anyone interested in taking local climate action, and you don't need to be a trained climate reality leader to belong. We cover a variety of topics. Our group started at level 2 when Barb and I gave climate action workshops at local libraries, which friends, acquaintances, friends of friends, and community members attended. Many of those people were interested in taking action, so are now members of our county team, which also has a number of members who are local elected people. Mary Ann is an active member of our group and also did the climate reality leadership training with Vice President Gore this past spring. One action our group has been involved in is engaging with local government to bring more clean energy into our county and our cities and to adopt more sustainable practices. You can see from this that most Bay Area counties have community choice energy, except for most of Solano County. Benicia and the unincorporated parts of the county have community choice energy through MCE. Our group lobbied the Fairfield City Council, who has since signed up, along with Vallejo. Another recent action our group has taken involves the Sassoon Marsh, which is the largest wetland area in Western North America. Its preservation is crucial. We heard about the petition to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers by Sunset Exploration to open up a sealed gas well to do exploration and drilling in the protected marsh. The exploratory drilling of our beautiful marsh would cause habitat disruption and potential water contamination risks. The project would also cause a disruption of the marsh's role as a carbon sink, as well as result in increased carbon emissions by disrupting the carbon that lies there. Our group wrote letters opposing the project and asked for a public hearing and environmental impact statement. The outcome is pending. Our level 4 actions are also important: to hold elected officials accountable, to urge them to support climate-friendly legislation, and to not be beholden to the fossil fuel industry. Otherwise, vote them out. The Paris Agreement in 2015, signed by every single nation in the world to a commitment to get to net zero by mid-century, and the US, thanks to President Joe Biden, has now re-entered the Paris Agreement. Here's a video from some world scientists of 6 policy steps that we need to take toward reversing the climate crisis.
A climate study endorsed by 11,000 scientists
from more than 150 countries
have banded together to warn of untold suffering.
Untold human suffering if climate change is not addressed.
They're claiming the Earth is in a climate emergency.
They wrote that the climate crisis is accelerating faster than most scientists expected.
The report draws on 40 years of data.
О климатическом кризисе. William Ripple
From Oregon State University, one of the lead authors of this study, ecology professor William Ripple.
As a solution, Ripple and Wolf have proposed 6 different policy goals that could help fix the issue.
Follow me.
Working their way into the public consciousness.
It just started with a thought in my head and a feeling about how scary climate change is, and I need to do just one thing. And that's the thing I decided to do. Hey, my name is Bill Ripple, and I'm a scientist. In this climate emergency paper, we lay out 6 steps, which are solutions to the impacts of climate change. Well, today we have with us Dr. Michael Mann. Welcome, Dr. Mann.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
I have some questions for you today. What about the role of government and the fossil fuel industry in changing course? What do you think?
We do need to see energy companies shift away from fossil fuels towards green energy, renewable energy, but they won't do that without government incentives. They're all things that we can do in our everyday lives to try to decrease our own individual carbon footprint. But unless we have economic incentives, subsidies for renewable energy, for a price on carbon, and for creating infrastructure, we won't see the large-scale shift in behavior that we need away from fossil fuels towards renewable energies. In the current public conversation about climate change, we're hearing a lot about those things now, which is encouraging. We're starting to really see some progress.
We really are at the stage where we have to do everything we can to avoid terrible consequences. And so I think most people are aware that carbon dioxide is critical to bring down emissions of that, but the short-lived pollutants are also critical. We need to act on carbon dioxide in the near term anyway, or it will get out of control in the long term. But one of the great things about dealing with short-lived climate pollutants and bringing those down is you get the benefits very quickly because they don't last that long in the atmosphere. And I think we have a little bit of a growing realization that it's important amongst non-governmental organizations and different governments around the world that we do need to target these other pollutants, partially because we've waited so long to deal with CO2 that, consequences are already here and now, and it's, as you have eloquently put it, it's a climate emergency.
Restoring and protecting natural ecosystems might not seem very intuitive to mitigate climate change. It comes down to the basics of photosynthesis. If you were to protect peatland or protect a mangrove in Bangladesh or India, they would continue to absorb the carbon dioxide that is released through anthropogenic processes, such as use of fossil fuels. So it's very important to not just conserve, but also restore and improve management of all our natural ecosystems. We estimated that natural climate solutions could provide 1/3 of the mitigation needed by the year 2030 to keep global rise in temperatures to 2 degrees centigrade.
Well, getting 1/3 of the way, I think, is huge. So nature can really work for us here. Thanks. Hello, Genesis. Good to see you.
Hi, good to see you too.
We published the World Scientists Warning of a Climate Emergency, and we asked that people eat lower on the food chain. How can changing our diets help the planet in the climate crisis?
Yeah, so animal agriculture isn't sustainable to the planet. It's the meat and dairy industry that's one of the main causes of climate change. Now there's so many studies that are saying that if half of the world went vegan, we'd be able to restore native forests and reverse climate change. So it's really important question where your food comes from. I started Youth Climate Save, which is a movement that focuses on how animal agriculture is harming the planet. A bunch of youth are starting to become activists because they're realizing of how important our voices are and how powerful our voices are to reverse climate change.
It's the economic system we bought into that is driving the destructiveness we're realizing today. Now, economists believe that they have invented a system that can grow forever. So consumption is a fundamental part of the economic system that we now live in. 70% of the American economy is based on consumption. Now, anybody knows that endless growth is the creed of cancer cells. Nothing can grow endlessly forever, but we have elevated the economy above the atmosphere that gives us air to breathe, that gives us weather, climate, and the seasons. Trees are taking carbon out of the air and putting oxygen back in it. Not a bad service, but there's no sense that whatever we do to nature, who gives us life, that we have a responsibility to care for it. That ain't in our economic system.
The human population will reach 8 billion people in 2023. To put that number a little in perspective, in 1800, the number of people was 1 billion. And the global middle class has the greatest aggregate impact on the planet in terms of ecological drawdown and in terms of pollution. garbage and greenhouse gases. And so it becomes very evident that lowering our numbers is a really important way to lower the impact on the Earth system. Wherever women are empowered, economically, socially, legally, and when girls and young women are supported to go to school, at least through secondary education, what happens is that the number of children women choose to have drops. That gives me hope because I feel that in our deepest heart, we are in love with this planet, and when we understand what's going on, there will be a shift.
Oh, thank you, Eileen. That's very inspiring to me.
Ripple says he hopes their paper raises awareness about how dangerous climate change is and encourages people to make a change.
It's going to be up to humanity to decide what to do next.
They say there's now a moral obligation on scientists to speak up.
We are at a social tipping point that I think we're going to see the policies start to change more rapidly now.
Oh, okay. So I think that is amazing. I mean, it's so inspirational to think that if people really understood the issue, that people's hearts would change. Again, reversing the effects of the climate crisis requires bold action, pushing the boundaries and stretching out of our comfort zone. Another action to consider is public service. In 2018, I trained with Emerge California, which is a group which trains Democratic women to run for political office. Since 2017, and it was after the 2016 presidential election, I became very politically engaged. In the March 2020 primary, I ran for the County Democratic Central Committee and won. I also serve as a delegate to the California State Party, Democratic State Party. And in November, I ran for County Board of Education with the ultimate goal of bringing sustainable, renewable practices and the idea of earth stewardship to our schools. I came up 3 votes short out of 36,000 votes. We actually went into a recount, which I stopped after a week due to the county going into a stay-at-home order due to COVID. But on the last day, we actually found 1 more vote. So it brought our difference to 2 votes out of 36,000. My experience is proof that every vote counts. Your vote is your voice, and know you have a choice. We know that voting is a social determinant of health, so voting rights, climate action, and health go hand in hand. This quote is from Sherry Mitchell, author of the book Sacred Instructions, Indigenous Wisdom for Living Spirit-Based Change. I highly recommend her book as a guide for prioritizing how we approach communities, honoring the 4 sovereignties, which include food, water, energy, and education. Here's a video of the group Save Tomorrow as an example of level 3 action.
We're really, really close. We've been really close since like kindergarten. Working as a team it gives you much more courage than if you're just working as an individual. If you're alone, it's always scary.
I have these 2 friends, Mari McBride and Lily Georgopoulos, and I've known them since I was before preschool.
I think what binds us together is our passion for what's going on around us. We're all doers.
So when we were little and we were first hearing about climate change,
it was on the news, it was in the papers, our parents were talking about it.
I just felt despair. It was worse than concern. It was just sadness. I didn't think there was anything anyone could do.
We got older and we realized that the grown-ups weren't doing anything about it. We kind of lost our faith in adults.
It If they care about us, they should care about our future too. No one was going to protect our future for us, and so we were on our own.
I think the fight against climate change is kind of like the fight of Harry Potter and the Death Eaters.
Harry Potter was born into this problem, just like we were born into this problem. We saw that Harry Potter was brave.
Even though he was a kid, he made a difference.
We kind of saw him as a role model.
When I was watching the Young Voices for the Planet films, I'd never seen kids in action before, and it was really, really amazing. And I realized that there was nothing different between me and the kids on those screens, and I could be doing what they were doing.
We thought, can we do something like this? Is it possible?
So I got really excited, and I got out a notepad, and I started writing. And I didn't know what I was going to do, but I was going to do something. All of a sudden, this idea just popped into my head. Save Tomorrow, that would be the group name.
Here in Lexington, the town laws didn't allow solarization of our town buildings.
We learned that there was a chance for all three of us to come and talk about climate change at the town meeting.
Lily and Mari and I wrote some statements to try and get them to allow solar panels to go on public buildings.
At first, we were a little bit scared. These are a bunch of grown-ups. They run the world.
To stop climate change, everyone has to pitch in and help. That means all of us right here in Lexington.
We decided to quote Dr. Seuss, using a quote from the Lorax. We said it together.
And remember, as Dr. Seuss said, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's gonna get better. It's not.
Thank you very much, ladies.
And then the whole town meeting just stands up and starts clapping. Even the moderator was clapping.
All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed?
It kind of hit us. We had helped this article pass unanimously.
It is unanimous. The motion carries.
We literally just skipped out of the town hall.
We had helped to get solar panels on all the town buildings. We weren't just helpless little girls.
We have more power than we'd ever imagined in our wildest dreams.
After that, it was like, well, we did that. What can we do now?
We found out that they were planning to tear down part of our forest right next to Alice's house.
It's so quiet and peaceful out there. All you can hear is like birds and wind.
Makes you feel really free.
It's just like a whole separate world.
We have forts back there. We have owls back there that we know. We know where all the animals live. We love those forests. And it was devastating to think that they could just tear down all those trees without even thinking about it. We immediately knew that we weren't gonna let this happen. We made a petition to save our woods.
To whom it may concern, we are the kids of Lexington, and we have too many amazing memories of Mountain Road without anyone disturbing the beautiful forest there.
And then we went around to the whole cafeteria asking people, do you want to sign this? Then we turned it in. And I think that they were really just overwhelmed. A bunch of school children all fighting for this little lot of woods behind their houses. This is like where they play. And I'm pretty sure they hadn't even realized that.
One of the reasons why people listen to kids is because we're trying to do what's right.
Whereas some adults, they're doing it for the money.
But they realized how much this plot of land meant to all of us, and I think that really helped them make their decision. They kept the woods there, and the woods are still there today.
We saved the woods from there to beyond my house over there. Yeah. It's more like a corridor in between two big woods. Yeah, a passageway for the animals.
We realized, wait, we have a new school. We can put solar panels on our new school, reducing CO2 emissions and really doing something about climate change. our whole school will be helping save the world.
Alice has been really fortunate to have found two friends that she's had really for her whole life, who share her passion and her interest and want to act on it with her.
We need to go out there and take a risk to make a difference.
We're taking it into our hands now. Seeing that we do have power and that we can make a change in the world, it's really inspiring. It really changes you. And I think it's just gonna grow from here. So find your team, find your passion, find your power.
Well, so now what will you do? So here are some local climate resources, and we can send you these, and we can also send the links to the 2 videos and the 101 solutions PDF after. We can send it via email. I just want to point out a couple, the Bay Area chapter of the Climate Reality Project, our Solano Climate Policy Action Team, which is an extension of the Bay Area chapter. Sustainable Solano, they are just doing some amazing stuff with resilient neighborhoods around sea level rise in Suisun City, resilient neighborhoods in Vallejo, in Vacaville. They're just doing some amazing stuff. Climate Health Now for any healthcare workers is a group that's focused on climate action. Pachamama Alliance, some of the slides were from them. They're based in San Francisco, and they've done some amazing educational programs around climate. I even put the League of Women Voters on this list because I'm so proud that you're providing education around this issue, and it's such an important issue, as well as Project Drawdown is on here. So please join those who are using their voices, their votes, and their choices to stand up for the future, because our world depends on it. This is a photo of the Milky Way over Monument Valley, Utah, taken by John Vermette. It's a reminder of how connected we are to the universe and to the web of life. We're all connected. Thank you very much, and I'd be happy to entertain questions.
So I'm looking to see if we have any questions in the chat, or does anyone have any questions out there for Dr. Bonnie?
First of all, I just want to say thank you so much. What a powerful presentation. And I was so taken with the video of the students. It's like kids. God,
it makes me cry every time. So I've seen it, dozens of times, and every time it still has that effect.
I so don't want to leave that task to them. So I guess one question I have is, obviously there are groups of students who are passionate about this work, and are any of those specific resources perhaps directed in that way?
Well,
some of us are educators, and that would be a natural fit for me.
So I would strongly encourage to look at the Climate Reality Bay Area chapter. They have a number of youth groups. There are, my daughter trained last summer. Now she's 23, but we also have had a number, any age. But again, the Climate Reality Bay Area chapter specifically has youth focused groups, kind of young adults, as well as like school aged kids. So that, in my thinking, would be the best resource, a best place to start.
Okay.
They also have a great climate justice group as well, very robust.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else, just jump in.
It said Susan has a question in the chat.
Is there any connection between climate and COVID? I think you talked to that.
Yeah, there's absolutely a connection. So climate is what we call a threat multiplier to COVID. So as I indicated, the closer you are to small particulate matter in the air, such as downwind of a fossil fuel, like a refinery, the higher risk you have of dying of COVID. There's a direct relationship between the more exposure you have, the more chance of death you have. And because those fence line communities are frequently, communities of color or other marginalized communities, then those folks are more affected. And I actually showed a slide showing, the death rates for people of color and indigenous people are the highest death rate. But there's other factors there too about what happened, with the lack of water. I mean, they lost all kinds of support on reservations in the Arizona and so forth during COVID. It was horrific for some people.
Okay.
I did want to add something that I kind of didn't mention, because I thought that the video, the six solutions video, was really, really very important, because it talks about kind of policy approaches. But I did want to mention, we have had this mindset in this country about conquering Mother Nature, conquering other people, about colonization and conquering. And we have extracted from the earth so much and not given anything back. So now's the time to shift that narrative to giving back to our earth, because it is, if we don't have our earth, we're not going to have, everything else falls away. And again, the whole idea of the economy, the whole concept of that this consumption economy, and and I would recommend the video, The Story of Stuff, if you haven't already seen that. And she also did The Story of Plastic, which was an excellent documentary as well. So there's so many resources out there, and it's just a real pleasure to have this opportunity to talk with you guys tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Bonnie, for spending your time with us this evening and presenting this wonderful presentation explaining climate change and the effects and solutions. And again, I'd remind you that we do have that link to 100 ways that we can all change the climate. Things like electrification of our homes, unplugging appliances, reduce, reuse, recycle, many, many things to think of. And one of the most important things we can do is tell people, talk about it with our friends, with our family. Let our families know, our children, our grandchildren know how important it is to us. And, as we all try and feel ignited that this is an emergency we're in, and we all need to be active in trying to find solutions. And so I'm going to close with a quote from a book by Rebecca Solnit called Hope in the Dark. Hope is not like a lottery ticket you can sit on the sofa and clutch. Hope is an axe you break down doors with in an emergency. Hope should shove you out the door, because it will take everything you have to steer your future away from endless war, from the annihilation of Earth's treasures, and the grinding down of the poor and the marginal. Hope just means another world might be possible, not promised. Hope calls for action. Action is impossible without hope. So with that, I hope we all have hope and feel inspired to take action this evening. So thank you all for attending. Okay.
Be well, everyone, and go out and do it.